Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook and I'm delighted to be joined for this episode by Phil Haynes. So Phil is a renowned drummer. His latest album, Return to Electric, features a lot of electronic experimental music, fusion. It's a really interesting album. What you're listening to now is Eclipse, one of Haynes' own tracks. And I hope you enjoy listening to my conversation with Phil Haynes about this album. Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you and your intrepid UK listeners?
Yeah, we're all good, thank you. Anyway, welcome to Harmonious World.
Thank you.
The premise of this podcast is based on a Quincy Jones quote, which goes something like, imagine what a harmonious world it would be if everyone shared a little of what they are good at.
Oh,
Isn't
that's
that
beautiful. I
yeah.
missed that by Quincy.
Oh, absolutely. He was such an amazing guy. I met him once and he was just such an incredible man, not just musically, as a human being. Yeah. So, Harmonious World is what I try to do is introduce people to music that they might not otherwise hear. So explain why it's called Return to Electric and where the concept of this album came from.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Oregon, and of course, growing up in the 60s and the 70s, I was literally marinating in the sounds of electric guitar, whether on pop radio or the jazz sounds of everybody from Jim Hall and Abercrombie and McLaughlin and you name it. And so I played with many guitarists, and some since both Jim Yonda and Steve Salerno I met in college, and I still have relationships with them professionally. And then, of course, when I got to New York, it was people like Ben Monder. And but interestingly, after I moved out of New York after almost 25 years, and moved to Central Pennsylvania, I was playing mostly with pianists on acoustic classical stages, and I just, you don't go out and hire guitarists that are just okay. You play with guitarists because they're great musicians. You any instrumentalist, right? And I just happen to have more pianists out here. So anyway, I noticed in my discography there was pretty much a 20-year break. And I thought, especially as a leader, and I thought, well, gee, this is an obvious hole to fill. And I had always looked forward to, um, well, I guess my whole generation fell in love with the fusion era, particularly the edgy parts of it at the end of the 60s, just before Miles came out with Bitches Brew. And the music was just sort of so alive that whole decade. There was a rawness about it. There was a newness. There was an exploratory aspect before fusion became commercialized in the 70s. And gee, as a student coming up, you don't have much to say that hasn't already been said. And I thought, how much fun would it be to play with Steve Salerno again and reuniting this rhythm section that had been our mentor, Paul Smokers, the Maverick trumpet player. It had been his last rhythm section for his notet for his last 10 years of recording. And sure enough, that old chemistry came back, and these guys, Drew Gress and Steve, were so excited to do both classics by Korea and Wayne Shorter and so on, as well as my originals. And so that's where it started, and we sort of all scratched our heads and said, I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but we're sure into it.
Yeah, and you pick some sort of, I think, less obvious Chick Corea tracks and the and Paraphernalia by Wayne Shorter and that sort of thing. They're kind of not the ones that if you listen to jazz radio or whatever that you're going to hear. I think, which is I really like about this album.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, we're musicians are like, great connoisseurs, collectors. We're avid listeners too. And I remembered, hearing Paraphernalia and hearing George Benson's with Miles and opening up with that rhythm guitar. And I thought, wow, there's this whole opening here and this great tune that's I only know it being recorded there. I guess Wayne probably recorded it later in his career, maybe live and so on. But it was such a powerful piece, and it has a flexible form where the in head, instead of, like 20 years before, where, if you played an AABA form, it had its 32 bar form and you say to it. Instead, um, the lengths of the phrases in the head itself, while they were playing the melodies, would shrink and expand depending on the cues. And then likewise between harmonic sections in the solos. And so this was a different kind of freedom. And as it turned out, to make a long story short, when we put it together for the album last year, I said to Steve, I said, George just played rhythm guitar on it. What happens when you get to your solo if you just play rhythm guitar? And he does. And of course, it is a solo, but it's solo rhythm guitar instead of with all the modern
Yeah.
things that are available to a guitarist's language these days. And we just had so much fun. And it's important to mine classic material that is underappreciated. This is what we all do as fascinated listeners, right? Find the stuff
Right.
that not everybody else, the jewels that have been overlooked or underlooked or something.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that that's such a special thing because it is easy to, I sometimes get sent albums that are kind of the Great American Songbook, and they're just the same ones over and over again, which are great tracks, but you kind of feel like, well, what are you bringing new to this? Whereas you're bringing new stuff to it and to tracks that I'd forgotten about. I remember that recording that you're talking about the about paraphernalia, but to hear it sort of reinvented in the 21st century, I think is really interesting in a good way.
Oh, thanks. As one critic said, there's something subversive about this record,
Yeah.
who would have guessed it, It's like it's quietly subversive because
Yeah.
yeah, we do definitely dip 60 years in the past for our inspiration, but it's like I say, once we've become mature musicians as we are now, have lived a few years, a few decades, it's much easier to have something to say that even the masters who were originally do it would dig, and they'd probably pat you on the back and say, "Yeah, you added your own little thing. Good job, man. Keep it going." Because that's what
Absolutely.
that's what the tradition's about, is growth.
Absolutely. I mean, everybody, all of those guys, if you listen to their early stuff, they might play the same tunes, but they play them in a different way 20 or 30 or whatever years later. And I love that about this music that, you know, I mean, I often say, there's 12 notes. Well, there are 12 notes, but the combinations are huge, and that the depth of kind of exploration, musical exploration is wonderful. So I love this
Isn't it
album.
amazing how
Yeah.
12 notes can be all but infinite in their possibilities?
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
course, there's other elements, rhythm, and
Of
all these
course.
things,
Yeah.
but still, oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah, and it's incredible, really, it really is. So at this point, I would like to play one of your tracks. I would like to play "Spell"
Oh,
because,
lovely.
yeah, I really like that. So we're going to listen to a little bit of that. So when did you write Spell, and did you write it for these guys for this album, or is it a tune that you've had in your head?
I had it in my head shortly after Paul Smoker passed, not quite a decade ago. I wrote it along with another tune on the record called Paul Christian. And Christian was another good friend of mine, and they died within weeks of each other. Two guys who were at my wedding standing up with me, and I lost half my best friends in 3 weeks. And one of them was my age, dying of a rare
Wow.
cancer at 50. So it was part of that song cycle, Spell was. And, I guess you're looking for the magic again. And as you as I started out, I was not feeling inspired, but I came up with first the bass vamp and kind of simple and repetitive, and I let it breathe. And then it's like, okay, I'll write a melody over it. And the first time it was read for a record was with the great Central Pennsylvania pianist Steve Rudolph. And Drew and I have a beautiful trio, Daydream, with him. And it came out really well. But all of a sudden, Drew was like, he says, "Man, if you ever do that electric project," and I looked at it, I said, "Yeah, I know." And then as it turned out, when Steve started going through my material, he says, "Oh, this is going to be great. I really dig this." And so we, yeah, we put it together, and this whole project, Return to Electric, both. It's sort of I'm a Gemini, and so I sort of have the twins, the split personality. And early in my career, I was a pretty aggressive energy kind of player. And a la, my heroes, Jack DeJohnette and Elvin Jones and Tony Williams. But then in the last 20 or 30 years, I developed all my other sidemen, and I had always been a sensitive player, but I developed all this more nuanced, quiet acoustic playing. So Return to Electric also was sort of like, I wonder if late in life I can grab some of that visceral stuff from my early years, even though I haven't done it for 30 years. Of course, you have to be with the right players. And because what I found was most people say they like all those guys, but when it comes to gigs, if you're in a studio and you're in a booth, well, leaders like that energy. If you're not, they don't want that energy live, right? Because it's,
Right.
as you know, the drummers can create a whole lot of decibels, particularly playing electric rock fusion music. So anyway, this was a challenge to myself. Can I be sensitive and really blow the top off of things? And this tune was one of the ones that I think shows both sides. So it was fun, and it did find its home with this band. There's really no reason to play it with many other groups now that this group has made it its own.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
cast the
definitely.
spell on me.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It really is. I mean, it's a really interesting track, and I think in some ways for me that it sort of, if I was going to say to somebody, right, just listen to one track off this album, that would be the one.
Oh,
Because
thank you.
yeah, because it just does it. I think it does everything that it's supposed to. So
Well, this is dangerous, but I'm gonna bring up Harry Potter for a moment because obviously spell. I mean, when was it that witches and wizards were popular again after all of the
right.
terrible trials and whatever until Rawlings came around? Well, anyway, I always cracked up. My wife and I would crack up watching Harry Potter or reading Harry Potter, and you know. Hermione would have all these long spells that she had to memorize and do and whatever. And so that's one reason when I realized how long the melody was
Right.
and and that it was different on the way out than it had been on the way in subtly and this, that, and the other. It was like, oh, it's a spell. And of course, it put a spell on us because to play great funk, you have to like sit in the pocket and get into the zone, baby.
Yeah, you really do. You really do. So, what are the plans for the release of this album? And are you going to play it? Are you getting the band back together again?
Oh yes, it's always a challenge when with current realities of booking and so on.
Sure.
Unless you have unless you have a successful major agent pushing you, or a successful major label, it can be challenging to get to the few gigs, the festivals, the major concert stages and series, it can be challenging to get on those. So we're not quite there yet. On the other hand, we're right on the edge of it. And the band will play. We'll certainly play in New York and the Northeast. And the question is, will we make the jump to Europe? And you just never know. What I found out a long time ago is you put it out and you do everything that you can. You combine your PR person. I have a great gal, Ann Braithwaite,
Yeah.
in a team out of Boston and a team with out of New York that do radio for me. And together, all of a sudden, we've been doing this for years. All of a sudden, surprising things happen, like interviews with Hillary.
There you go.
And we're having fun, and all of a sudden, there are new audiences and new possibilities. And so, yes, of course, we'll play. The question is how much, because I sort of drew the line a long time ago. It was one thing to have to invest in my own records because, after all, it's part of an archive. It's a durable good in a sense, and I have control of it, especially if I own the sites that it's on, such as my Bandcamp or my record country company. But I always drew the line. I didn't want to like go into debt to. I'd break even, but I didn't want to play my music going into debt,
No.
right? It's like, come on. It's like
Yeah.
we've all been doing this on the international stage for a long time. Take a chance.
Yeah.
People are
Uh,
gonna dig it.
yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I really hope you come over to the UK with it. So
Wouldn't that be a hoot?
that would be amazing. And I've heard some really interesting stuff at Ronnie Scott's recently at the 606, the Vortex. We've got several jazz clubs, so you need to be onto those guys. And
Hello, yeah, you guys have storied places. It isn't just New York's Village Vanguard, let me tell you.
no, 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 absolutely. We have some of the coolest clubs, and there are new ones opening all the time. We've got there's one called Soul Mama, which is in East London. Then there's going to be a Blue Note in the centre of London. So there's plenty of places. So you got to come and play.
Well, yeah, and Ronnie Scott's, as it turns out, my first two jazz records, when I was taking drum lessons, and my drum teacher, when I was 11 years old, said to my parents, "Get into these two." One was Elvin Jones and Merry Go Round, the first La Fiesta with Chick Corea and Dave Liebman's on it, and so on. The other one was Buddy Rich live at
Yeah,
Ronnie Scott's, live in
yeah,
London.
yeah,
And man, Elvin, it took me 10 years to sort of decode that as a fifth and sixth grader. But Buddy Rich, I could play along. I couldn't hope to play all of what he was playing, but I could play along with my basic rock beat to ba day 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 day
yeah,
day day. I
yeah.
was like, oh, it was an anthem for me for a decade.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I heard Buddy Rich play in the UK in London a couple of times, and I think he had that ability. I mean, for a start, he always had great musicians in his band. His
Sure.
big band was incredible, and I think that he had that ability, which I think is what you do in some of the tracks on this, is that you show the breadth of music. It's not just funky, it's everything. So funky is
Oh
good.
no, we got it all.
Yeah,
We got it all
exactly.
going on.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining me for this chat. It's been really nice.
Oh, this is such a hoot, and
Yeah,
let's not be strangers. We can do this again. After all, there's
absolutely.
always new music coming out, at least in Phil world.
Yeah, well, brilliant. So just get in touch and let me know about it.
Wonderful. Yeah, look for my band Free Country, a new album called Liberty Now coming out in the fall. And
Okay,
you'll be seeing it, yeah, I think late October. I think October. Yeah.
excellent. Okay, that's on my list.
You'll get a kick out of it. Got to have a little
Ex-
protest here and there.
Oh yeah. Oh, don't get me
Oh,
started.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's such a pleasure talking to you, Phil. Thank you so much.
This was a hoot.
Thank you for joining me for that episode of Harmonious World. Wasn't it wonderful? What you're listening to now is Cycle, written by Phil Haynes, and from Return to Electric, this album, which is out now on Cornerstone Jazz. Please do follow the links in the show notes to either contact me online or listen to more of Phil's music. And thank you once more for joining me for Harmonious World. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook, and it's a great delight to bring this series of discussions with musicians and composers and writers and all sorts of people to you. Obviously, there's no point in having a podcast if people aren't listening, and I'm very grateful to my listeners for doing so. Thanks also to Joe English for composing and performing this new theme tune. So wherever you get your podcast, you can leave a review. You can share this with your friends and family, either as a link or on social media and that sort of thing. I'd be really grateful for that. Don't forget that you can subscribe now. There's a link wherever you get your podcasts. So have a great week, and please remember why I started this, which is just to try and make the world a little more harmonious. Thanks for listening to Harmonious World.